An initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership, formed in 2007, Square One DSM exists to connect entrepreneurial needs with qualified resources and to provide guided professional and business direction. Square One DSM helps entrepreneurs maximize their successes by helping them navigate resources, strengthen knowledge, improve skills, form strategic alliances, and secure proper capitalization. To find out more about Square One DSM, visit www.squareonedsm.com.
I think our attendance suffers from beautiful weather because it is gorgeous out there. So thank you all for coming. I'm Mike Caldwell. I work for the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and my focus is on all things startups through something called Square One DSM. Basically, we work with entrepreneurs focusing on high growth potential startups, anywhere from I have an idea and I don't know where to go next to I need to raise several $1 million, and quite a few things in between. Do a lot of business model development, financial models, direct consulting, a lot of connections. I would say my title is probably instigator more than anything. So we have a resident accelerator program over in the East Village. We have 2 companies in there now and are about to add a third. Along with that, do the indirect consulting. I also run Plains Angels, which is an angel investor forum in the area. Just had a meeting, in fact Monday, had a very successful meeting. But we're always looking for a couple companies to pitch each month for funding. And there to help people get ready for that process. So if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Reach out afterwards, or give me a call, or drop me an email, whichever. A couple upcoming event announcements. Something really fun, I hope. We're doing our first, what we hope will be annual startup family picnic. A lot of our startup events are nights and weekends, or nights and mornings and midday, and they're not very family friendly in the sense that they usually are a little too focused on alcohol perhaps and bars. So we're doing a family picnic. This will be from 11 to 4 on October 3rd. For all of you that are on my email distribution list, you're going to get an email about this probably tomorrow. But it's also posted out on Facebook. There's a Facebook event. We are asking people to sign up particularly because we're actually providing some food. Basically, the main course, whether it's a meat or a vegetarian option, plus dessert will be provided, and we're just asking everybody to bring a side. There'll be games for the kids. We're out at Easter Lake Park, which is a beautiful park, and the shelter we have has a giant playground, so the more kids the better. We just asked everybody to sign up in advance. So that's going on October 3rd, 11 to 4. Next month on Startup Stories, we're going to do something a little different. The gentlemen and ladies I work with have decided that they need to turn the microphone around. So Tej Dawan's going to come in, and he's going to kind of interview me, and we're going to talk about where we are as a startup community, what's working, what's not, what we see when it comes to funding, etc. So I kind of am hoping the press doesn't show up to watch what we say, but no, anyway, we're just really going to talk about what's going on in the startup community. So with that, one more thing, you're going to receive an email sometime later today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, with a survey. I really would like you to fill it out. It's 5 questions. It helps me improve what we do. A lot of the speakers I've had here came straight out of the responses to those emails, so I get some really great ideas on who to have come and talk. And sometimes some better questions to ask, that type of thing. So please, if you can I think it takes about 3 minutes from the click of the email on to do it. I appreciate it. So a little bit about today's speaker, Drake University grad. Worked for a couple of small companies, Genentech and Eli Lilly, just small companies. So Ben Lefevre, welcome. Thank you for coming today.
It's good to be here.
So I got to start off with this. You came from the corporate world and ended up in a startup. And I know you look really young, but I think you've been out there for a couple of years at least. One or two, right? One or two. But what made you change from the corporate world to startup world?
That's a good question. The last company I worked for, although it was a large corporation, they were pretty innovative. Some people would call them kind of the founder of the biotech industry, Genentech. But with that being said, I always had kind of a passion for entrepreneurship, and I think it goes back to your experiences. My dad was an entrepreneur.
Right.
And also too, just knowing with my experience in the healthcare landscape, how things were changing, it's always something that was in the back of my head. And I had opportunity knowing that I was going to have basically a 6-week paid sabbatical after I've been with my company for so many years, so a great benefit that they had. And I knew I was going to get my ducks in a row to see if this is truly what I wanted to do, and it was, and so I did.
That's kind of cool. They paid you to go off and figure out you wanted to leave.
Yeah, I don't think that's what they
probably
planned.
not their first plan.
No, it probably wasn't their first plan to do that. But, you know, part of it is just to kind of get away from work and reevaluate things, refresh.
Sure.
Because, you know, within the Genentech and healthcare landscape, particularly in the pharmaceuticals, biotech, it's a really work hard, drive hard industry. And so, but no, I don't think they expected you to think about your exit strategy during that time. So.
Well, and you never know. They may end up buying what you did. I mean, a lot of these industries, that's what you do. You leave, you go invent something, and then they buy it and bring you back. So that's how Cisco got to be Cisco.
That's interesting.
So when did you actually start Certintell? When did that actually begin?
Well, my sabbatical was in the fall of 2013, and I extended a little bit because I had some vacation days as well. So officially, I guess, to answer your question directly, it basically launched January of 2014.
Okay, so pretty recently.
Yeah.
So how have you, let's ask it more directly, have you self-funded along the way?
I mean, I essentially, when I made this decision, during my 6-week sabbatical, I kind of made the decision before that. I had a plan as far as knowing what I wanted to do, at least have an idea of what I wanted to do, knowing the technology that I was looking to build, and luckily for me, being with Genentech for the many years I had, I had some company stock that vested, so I was able to use that to, like you said, bootstrap my business.
Yep. So cool. So take us back. Why did you start Certintell? Tell them a little bit about what it is, I guess, first.
Yeah. So.
And then why'd you do this?
Sure. We're simply a telehealth or telemedicine company, and what we have is a HIPAA-compliant Skype-like platform that facilitates virtual visits. And in one of my previous roles with Genentech, I had an opportunity to work with the University of Iowa. And at that time, the specialties I was calling on were liver specialists, hepatologists. A shortage of them. A lot of hepatitis C in Sioux City, other outlying parts of this rural state. And they were going to implement a program that tailored a program in New Mexico called Project Echo. But essentially it was, how can we as specialists expand our reach and educate local providers through video conferencing so they could treat their local patients? Because before, these patients either had to drive from, Sioux City, 5.5 hours to the University of Iowa to get treated. And essentially, patients were dying from their liver disease. So that was my first kind of experience with telehealth or telemedicine.
So, but it was doctor to doctor.
It was doctor to doctor, so different. So it was doctor to doctor education. And on a personal level, like I said, get it out there. I have a young brother that is a veteran and has schizophrenia, lives in kind of more rural Indiana, and him struggle with access to care was a huge issue. And putting those two together, and kind of knowing with the healthcare landscape experience where it was going, that's kind of why I started this.
All right, makes sense. So tell us where you are today. And you've launched your product. Let me just kick it off. But you're out in the market. Tell us where you are. What's going on right now?
Well, it's been a journey. It's been a
very
journey.
Polite way of putting it.
And in the startup terms, we talk about customer discovery. Where you're going to launch. Who do you feel is going to be your customer base? And we decided that one of the opportunities and biggest needs was in a mental health space initially, particularly not just the psychiatrists or folks that are part of big universities, but your average private practice mental health provider.
Right.
That needs to increase their access to care. And so went to a lot of conferences, even before we had a product, talked about what the needs were. And where we're at today is we do have users, we have some paying users, and we're continuing to get feedback as we continue to build our technology and grow our customer base.
If you would, for people, talk a little bit more about rural, because I know I have, my wife is from Ottumwa, and Ottumwa is one of those towns that's on a downturn, and it's been there for a long time. And a lot of these kinds of specialty care aren't necessarily available now in small towns like Ottumwa. and even smaller towns. I mean, that's a fairly good-sized town in Iowa. But how does it affect those towns? What's the benefit? What's the benefit to those towns of something that's like Telehealth?
Well, one of I think the biggest challenges within the telehealth market, this is not a new market. This is, we're going into an existing market, but the technologies previously were very expensive. You had to buy expensive video conference equipment, place it, and a lot of health centers, particularly if you were a smaller or mid-sized practice, couldn't afford those resources and tools. And so how it affects it, quite frankly, these patients in rural areas don't get treated. And they have poor outcomes, and in many instances, folks that are in the healthcare landscape understand this, die. I mean, I saw it with hepatitis C. I mean, that liver disease never got treated and got liver cancer and died. So that is the effect of living in an underserved area as far as access to care.
Yeah. So if in my experience, like with the TUMWA, the hospital there may not have the right counselors in place. How does the hospital engage what you do, or do they?
Well, I think in regards to the hospital systems, a lot of them have really started to step up because they have some of the resources. They say, listen, we have, take Unity Point or Mercy or whatever. They have clinics and practices in smaller areas, and so they've made investments to say, listen, we have a limited number of specialists, but we're going to do the best we can to expand their reach and access through telehealth. And what we focused on initially is particularly in the mental health field. The first line of defense usually for mental health care is not your psychiatrist. Right. So it's usually that clinical social worker, mental health counselor.
Right.
Correct.
There's a front line to all that you go through.
And so what we've found as we've kind of partnered with these organizations that want to expand their reach, we've been able to go to some of these rural health clinics or rural area that need better access to services and mental health and say, hey, we want to partner with you. We have providers that are providing this technology. It's not a big capital investment for you, and make that connection. And that's why I don't look at us as a technology vendor. We look at us as a telehealth partner.
Right. You mentioned something to me, and I'd like you to maybe amplify for the group about when you are suffering from mental illnesses or feel like you're suffering from something, sitting in a waiting room is not always exactly what you want to do. Is with a bunch of the people that are maybe feeling the same way, and if it's your first time. Talk a little bit about what telehealth does for the people that are in that situation.
Well, first, I even go to the provider practitioner side. It's like Mason says, up to 30% of patients in a mental health cancel their appointment. So think about up to 30% never show up. So because it goes right to where you said a comfort level, and then you focus on the younger generation, the millennials. They're just used to technology and having that barrier. And so with telehealth, it just allows patients, clients to be in their own most comfortable setting to get the care that they need. And as a result, they're more apt to keep that appointment and actually tap into the resources that are out there.
Okay. So today the system works PC to PC basically?
Yeah, it's web to web, and we're continuing to evolve where, we talked about millennials, everybody's on their iPhone or app, but
tablets, tablets. I'm sitting here going.
To be able to increase our capacity or usability by making more accessible with that, but it is currently web to web. So that's the benefit of it. There's not a lot of capital folks need to use our HIPAA compliant platform. As long as you have internet access, broadband, which is still an issue in some rural areas. Sure. But a computer, which most of them have a webcam and audio, then you can utilize our platform.
Pretty common now. Yeah. All right. So you're headed for more mobility, though. Is that where you're going?
We have to.
I mean, it's to me that's where it gets really interesting is when they can just use their own devices. That's where it's headed.
Correct.
Right? So what's the benefit to the practitioner? If I'm a counselor, if I'm a provider, talk a little bit about how they get paid, how they get compensated, and how this benefits that.
Yeah. Well, first, that's still the challenge as far as really growing this market is how they get paid. Reimbursement hasn't quite caught up to the technology. When I say reimbursement, I'm talking about them being able to bill their healthcare professionals. Bill insurance to get paid for these distant services. But it's getting better. But particularly if you're in a private practice, you're a small or mid-sized practice, mental health or whatever, they do still have those cash-paying patients, those out-of-pocket paying patients. Right. And so so to be able to keep those appointments and be able to schedule those and take a payment through a platform and keep those appointments is really the value proposition that
and they don't get paid when they're not working. I mean, so somebody
Correct.
cancels. Two people cancel an appointment, they don't get paid,
They don't get
right?
paid.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is they're not on a salary.
Correct.
They're getting paid by the provisioning of their services.
You know, you go to a conference, you know, where many of these healthcare professionals go to get continuing education credits. You're gone for a week. That's lost revenue if you're in a private practice setting. So essentially, if you bring your computer or laptop or web-enabled device, the patient is at a location where they can connect with you, then you can keep many of those appointments and you know, increase their revenues as well.
Right. All right. Well, maybe let's open it up to the audience.
Sure.
Let's see if there's some questions from the audience. If not, I'll pick on you some more.
Sounds good.
Questions from the audience? Yeah?
So you have some paying customers now that are paying for the service?
We do. We do have some paying customers, and one of the things that we're continuing to do, because my background is, you know, is in sales, you know, some marketing, but just in the healthcare landscape. So I love getting out there, you know, customer discovery, talking to them to find out what we need to do to make additions to the platform. But we do have current paying customers and gotten great feedback to make our platform even better, to get more paying customers.
How far away is the farthest away from this area?
We have clients in Nebraska. They have some pretty good reimbursement for therapy. Actually in Indiana, a client in Illinois, but most of them are here in
You know, that's
Iowa.
a great question. You might talk about your competition because that was one of the reasons you're focused here.
Yeah, you know, when I started this, actually after my sabbatical, I came back to Des Moines, and knowing that I was going to launch it here, no question. This is becoming a very competitive space. But not a lot here in the heartland that are doing it. A lot of them are on the coast or what have you. And so I hate to say, you know, I don't like the term first mover advantage, but, you know, we do have some opportunities here in the heartland to scale, and we have a lot of rural areas here.
Right, we do. But it's a common thing in when you're looking at the United States, you have to understand the 95-5 rule, and that is that 95% of the people are in 5% of the locations, and they tend to be on the coastlines and the belt. So there's this giant market out here that actually has 50, 60 million people in it if you go into some of the cities, but it can be underserved from a tech company standpoint.
And we do have more, when you get down to, I talked about being able to bill and reimbursement. You know, Medicare has designated certain areas health professional shortage areas, and we have a lot of those. And with that, there's some unique reimbursement opportunities for healthcare clinicians to get paid for doing virtual visits. And so I think that is some opportunities that we've had as well to, you know, expand our client base.
Question? Yeah, in the back.
So you spoke about liver disease, and what I see emerging now are certain technologies to spot those diseases early on based on skin tone, skin color, and eyes. At any point do you see your technology evolving in terms of monitoring facial recognition or skin color to actually help with or assist a doctor to diagnose something before it even gets to
Yeah, so when does telehealth move to diagnostics? I mean, when do you use the visuals of it for diagnostics?
Well, it's here. You know, in telemedicine, telehealth, there's really three areas. It's video conferencing, which is kind of our core focus. Remote monitoring, you know, wearing wearable devices, be able to see provider be able to get that data at a distance. And the other one is called store and forward. So I think that would be similar to what you're talking about, where you can take, well, a biopsy is different, but you could take an image, think in a dermatology setting, take a picture or whatever, or radiology, whatever it is, and share that image, and the provider makes a diagnosis from that or treatment recommendation, and that's becoming reimbursable as well. So we're here with that, and that is happening today.
You know, it's interesting. I have a background in CCD technologies, which is the basis of all the cameras in your phones. And this new iPhone that Apple is launching that's coming out in 2 months, the camera in that thing is going beyond what anybody even thought 5 years ago thought was possible. The images coming out are just amazing. It actually is a higher resolution than some of the medical optics just 6 years ago.
Correct.
And you think about that, in a way, the hardware, for one of the first times in a long time, it used to be the software was always ahead of the hardware. We were always waiting for the hardware to catch up. We're going to have this abundance of incredibly high resolution imaging.
No doubt.
And I think the software is going to have to catch up with, okay, you've got all this information, how do you analyze it?
Correct.
Because you're talking about some images that are just monstrously accurate and large and rich.
Correct.
So it's going to be interesting to see.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So you have some revenue coming in. Where are you going to take your company?
Yeah.
Adding employees, getting some funding. What are some of the plans?
Yeah, I mean, that's, as Mike and I talked about it, been bootstrapping it for a while. It's been challenging. I mean, I have a technology support that's very experienced in HIPAA compliance and security, but be honest, when it comes to everything else, it's me. I can't be everywhere. So we are certainly, at that point where, as far as, raising, capital, who are we going to have as our core team to really scale? But how are we going to scale is continue to focus on mental health practitioners and groups. For us, as we've gotten experience in mental health, from a scalability, we've got some good traction in regards to employee assistance program providers, EAPs, that has a network of clinicians that want to provide a better service to employer groups. So we see that as a really quick way for us to scale from an employer standpoint, partner with EAPs that has a large network of clinicians to do that. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, we need the capital to do that. That is in our growth plan, and to continue to add more boots on the ground to scale.
You say Howard, do you have others, employees today?
Yeah, I mean, I have, like I said, I have a CTO, I have 2 interns that have done great work for me, and I have a very active initial investor and advisor that's really been very active on the day-to-day operations. So that's the core team currently.
You've got Caldwell.
Exactly.
Well, and he's not going to answer your question about funding because I keep advising about the SEC rules about standing in front of a group of not accredited investors
can't do
and
that.
advertising because you can't do it. To that point, yeah.
But we want to scale.
Another question. A lot of times it's difficult for if employees have certain issues at work to leave work based on obviously location of the service provider or based on who they actually want to see versus who they can see.
Yep.
Do you foresee in the future some point where you have a relationship with an employer and they can set up designated rooms for your service?
Yes. And that's why I'm excited about the employer market. It's when you talk about the growth of telehealth, there's going to be a lot because of healthcare reform, how providers getting paid, a different reimbursement, which really ties to telehealth. But the other biggest reason why telehealth growth is because employers are starting to implement it just in the way that you talked about. I mean, from a mental health standpoint, I think the statistics I saw is 200 million lost working days a year just because of depression alone annually, $44 billion in lost productivity just due to depression alone. And so you're right, again, talking about the millennials where they're used to having a technology or whatever, don't always want an in-person visit. Employers are really engaging telehealth providers to provide those types of services so the employees can get the care where they need, don't have to always leave work to get access to services, or if they can't get it, still get the care that they need.
I think to me one of the things that's driving on both sides is just simply cutting out the travel times and costs. So if you've got a person with a low income, the idea of being able to do it from the location you're in or doing it local, right? So even if you didn't have that broadband coverage, if you're in a small town, can you go to a local doctor's office and access the equipment versus getting in a car, driving to Des Moines, driving to Iowa City? And then for the employers, I mean, if you don't have to drive 30 minutes each way and leave the building and come back, it's a benefit on both sides, especially for the hour employee that's not going to get paid for that hour. It's another hour. So I think there's thankfully some good upsides to this along with it. There's always a fear of something new. But there's some good upsides. Yeah.
Hey, you talked a little bit about telehealth and video conferencing platforms. You've got competition.
Yep.
You're not the only video conferencing platform that's out there. You've talked a little bit about geographical advantage. Is there some other unique selling advantage that you've got, though, or part of the product that's advantageous specific to mental telehealth that's different?
Yeah, when I went into this market, my feeling is I feel it's getting validated. In telehealth, particularly, it's not about the technology. It's about a company that's going to be successful in this is one that knows how to navigate the healthcare landscape, how payers and how tied with with healthcare reform, for example, not only that with the whole what's called patient-centered medical homes, how these practices are charged with getting care at one place, all those different things and dynamics. It's really dynamic area, and I take my over 13 years experience in the healthcare landscape in many different roles, and I think that's what's going to make us successful, just knowing how all those key stakeholders work together.
Your experience in navigating all that regulatory.
Yeah, correct.
And I do
It's key.
think that's one of the challenges with telehealth is the technology is close to free now. The core components of building this are open standards now, and you're not going to probably outrun those. Even if there's something better, you're going to see the industry going, time out, we want the open standards because we don't want to pay for access, we don't want unique platforms.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, I mean, I don't always lead to this. I mean, we've got our business. People can see I would designate myself as a minority. We have some unique certifications from the government side, as well as some unique access, as we talked about. Employers are looking to implement this, and payers because of some of the certifications we have. So from a competitive landscape and a market accessibility, I think we have some unique things as well compared to some of our newer startup competitors out there as well.
Doug, I saw you had a question.
Yeah.
So if you look at it a couple of years from now, and you look at what you think the market is going to look like in your search, just bring us into
Yeah, where are you going? Where are you going to be in 3 years?
I mean, what I've tried to do is, we all have the grand plans of just running the world, but I'm trying to be very focused right now. I do feel from a employer group status that that is a huge opportunity for us to partner with employer groups that want to implement telehealth, and really scaling within that market is where we're really excited to go. With that, there are a lot of players within the larger health systems as well, and I think we can carve out a niche within ACO models, accountable care organizations, and not to get too in the weeds, but it's these organizations that have a different payment model where it's not the normal fee-for-service model where you go in and the doctor gets paid for the consults you do, but actually the providers are paid by actually how well you do as a patient. I think there's some opportunities within there, but as of right now, to really focus on that EAP employer market, and certainly the private practice mental health professionals.
And I would guess there are probably some niche markets too.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, certainly.
Well, I think that's what people don't understand about that don't have any background in medicine is there are so many unique niches in medicine, and it is, to me, it's like saying engineer. There are thousands of kinds of engineers out there, so to use the word medicine is just to describe a massively high-level market that has so many permutations in it and so many different needs, and they're specialized for a reason. I see a question. Yeah.
I wonder about the payment, how that plays. For example, if you've got someone in a rural area, or for example in the travel space in Chile, a huge part of people's travel, they book it online, but they go and pay for it at a local bank or something like that. So people might have a credit card. So
How does payment work?
how do you deal with that?
So how do you deal with payment?
Well, let me say if I understand your question.
He jumped to Chile on you.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand
He's from
your question.
Australia.
I'm a minority as well.
He's the Aussie. I'm not buying it.
So from a payment, from how...
Yeah, like if someone doesn't have a credit card, so if they're using your service, do they have to pay for the service first, or how does
Yeah, because our initial focus has been small and medium-sized practices, and many of our, like I said, private practice. So within our platform, it is required that a patient or a client submit a debit or credit card, and so our platform facilitates a payment gateway. So right away after that consult is done, that provider gets transferred those funds. That's how it's just something in customer discovery that was important to them. But if they don't, there is an option if, for example, if they want to bill them later, that they don't have to take a payment right now, or if they're going to do what's called a sliding scale fee, where somebody can't afford it but they still want to see them, then they just don't have to take a payment and can set up arrangements at a later time. But the answer, our platform does facilitate a copay or self-pay payment from the client or patient to the clinician. Yep.
As far as, it's awesome that you're going in this space. As far as larger companies go, one thing I was worried about is agility. Agility from your standpoint, and also, have you seen any movement from large insurance providers or large companies to also enter this space, also, or just to compete?
Yeah.
Have you seen that move?
Yeah, what do you see in the competitive landscape?
Well, it's interesting. Let's just take the payers. What they're doing, like a lot of the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, and we hope to be one with Wellmark, but they're partnering with telehealth providers. So instead of building the technology or whatever, they're just partnering with a organization that, one, the value is we have onboarded and trained our providers are utilizing our platform how to do it effectively, so they like that aspect versus them doing it themselves. So it's all about partnerships. You take a large health system, I equate it to electronic health record market. Could large health systems build and do their own, but it's just that question of build versus buy, and the decision has been because these healthcare entities have so many things going on that it's just easier to buy and partner than build.
I know when I talk to a lot of the CIOs that are in the industries here in the area, it's more and more every day. We always want to buy in. If there's any way to buy it in, we're going to buy it first, because building things is so expensive. They're doing all the same challenges of finding, training, and keeping great technology people, and they have enough things that they have to do themselves. They have no choice. That anything that can be outsourced, anything that could be a shared value, because he can deliver it a lot cheaper to them as a customer than they can ever build it themselves. And do it now versus it becomes a project, and in big companies, projects become big projects with long timelines. It's just the nature of large companies. So I think definitely the general trend is that we're seeing more and more large companies be more active of saying, who can provide this for me? So for now, that's the good news for a lot of small startups, is that they're looking out. Quite likely, if somebody's going to decide to jump in the market, they'll just buy one of the providers so that they buy in a working product and a system. Yeah.
What makes a HIPAA compliant video conferencing?
The difference is, for example, you talk about Skype or FaceTime. Most of those platforms are secure. But the difference is really an audit trail. For example, if there's a data breach, what's your process of notifying your customers of what's happened? If they're able audited from like a payer insurance, are you able to give them those audit trails and information about that? And essentially, are you going to sign a business associate agreement with your clients? Those all go into HIPAA compliance and security. So the answer is not about the security, it's just about what is your process if there is a data breach of sharing that information with your customers.
Is the video stream, is it recorded?
We do not record. We haven't found that as a need from our clients, but all of our data is encrypted and rest and in flight. Anything that's stored on our portal is secure and bank level encryption and the like. So we've done kind of like all of our due diligence. So that's one of the challenging things about the HIPAA compliance and when we came in, because there's some new basically regulations as far as what it is to be HIPAA and high-tech compliant, and we've done that.
So it's not recorded, there's not a recording of the video conversation?
No.
Archive?
No. If it's a need, we could do that, but again, for us from a revenue standpoint, if they want to store that on our secure platform, that increses
the problem with storage of videos,
exactly.
It gets expensive.
So
Well, I think the whole idea of capturing and storing the video, there's certainly probably some uses, but I don't think there's been any economics put around the uses. I mean, that I know of. We're seeing that with some other startups that are looking at taking video that's been captured and analyzing it over time, and it's really early in saying, is there a way for that to make monetary sense? And I don't know the numbers on malpractice in the in the psychiatric counseling marketplace. I don't even know what that looks like. So, but I do know the minute you start storing all that stuff, you've got a huge security question and
But to your point,
discoverability.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, I think of telehealth as just like an in-person visit. So the patient-client checks in. The provider, this is either through outgoing calendar, or we have what's called a on-demand consult as well. The provider takes encounter notes. They can do that within our platform, save them. But the one thing for the provider side is that we facilitate automatic informed consent. So we have all that documented as well, that the patient agreed to do an informed consent telehealth. So all those things are, as far as legal, we feel are in that process to do. But think of it as just like an in-person visit, but
you're just extending the ether.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Any other questions?
Yeah, Dave.
What role does the health insurance community play in this? Do you have to give them their support first before you can really market?
Yeah, what's the role of the health insurance communities?
I mean, they really drive the bus, to be honest with you. They do. If it's a self-pay scenario, or for example, you have an employer that's a self-funding plan, then not so much. But from be able to providers able to bill, that's why telehealth up to now hadn't really taken off. So, but now you're seeing parity legislation where states are requiring that private payers reimburse at the same rate as an in-person visit for a lot of those telehealth codes. Iowa's a little bit behind the times, but all around us is happening. And so that is why the biggest growth is because payers are starting to pay for it. And they're not doing it out of goodness of heart. They're finding that it actually lowers costs, increase outcomes.
Yeah, the good news is there's an economic benefit that can be proven. So,
but they drive the boat.
Affordable healthcare, that's the big driver now.
Correct.
well, and talk a little bit about what the VA is going through right now with the number of veterans suffering from PTSD and other forms of mental illness. I mean, they're facing a similar challenge, right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, we've all seen, I think in the last year, the VA has gotten some pretty bad press about, secret lists and everything else. And matter of fact, veterans dying from the disease. But they've actually, surprisingly enough, the VA has been ahead of the curve in regards to telehealth because it was such a need. And they've seen a return on those investments as far as improved outcomes and quality, as you kind of talked about.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, we're over the hump of acceptance. It's now implementation. In theory, they accept. Now it's how do we make it work in our system?
Correct.
So
exactly right. Oh, so another question over here. Yep. Sorry.
Full disclosure, I work at a healthcare institution.
Okay.
yes, you do. It's okay.
You mentioned the EHRs that a private practice or a health system have. We've made large investments in those and want to capture a lot of the information.
Yeah.
So has your company done any work with the integration as to if they're able to document what they've done during this visit? A lot of private practice or systems will want that information to be put into their medical record. And I know that the integration can be complex. Have you done that yet, or do you have plans to integrate what you collect into it?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to do a handshake with the system and share, a continuity of care document or what have you. So the short answer is yes. Particularly, there are more EHR companies, one particular that focuses on mental health that has their API available, so you can do an integration for that. Again, we have large plans of partnering with large health systems potentially or what have you, but we know that is going to have to be a critical piece for that. So there are some integration partners out there that can help do that handshake out, and we've kind of looked at those companies and have a plan. So for example, if Broadlawns or somebody else says, hey, we need you to share the information, we do have a process and a plan of how to do that. But I think the challenge is that is still a huge challenge, not just from a telehealth platform, but just EHR sharing information with each other and doing that. But from where the market is going, we know we have to be able to provide that service and do that. So we have strong plans to do that. Yep. Yeah.
With your initial private practice users, how much education did you actually have to do with them on where they need to be licensed and if they can use this and stuff. Because with us, we only didn't even know what a business associate agreement was and why we needed an associate. I was just curious, initially, how did you navigate walking them through all that when they were probably unsure?
Yeah, I think that's where we look at ourselves as not just a vendor, but a partner. So part of the thing we provide is education, updates, because this market is so changing. Hey, here are some new codes that are reimbursable now through Medicare that are mental health codes that you could potentially bill for, all those things. So to answer your question, there was a lot of education up front, particularly in Iowa. I'll give you a big difference between Iowa and Nebraska. Nebraska, through their Medicaid program, they allow therapists to bill for most mental health sessions. Iowa, we're not there yet. So my difference in education between the two states was markedly different. But you just hope to know, based on customer discovery, what they need to know. Just give it to them clearly and concisely what you can bill for and how they can expand their reach and make money doing this. And it was a pretty quick process for us.
One of the things that surprised me, if I can jump in, is
please.
When someone shows an interest in your product. So let's say I'm a clinician of some form and I say, this is really interesting, onboard me, and I'm not here in town. Tell me what happens. How long, what happens, what's the process?
Essentially we set up now we can do everything through a webinar. Okay. So we do a quick demo for that. We set them up with a live console so they can see the quality of our audio and hear the quality of our video, kind of the core functionality, and do that. Initially, what we did then is give them a 30-day free trial. That's what we did initially.
Yes, you did.
And we've stopped doing that because if they see a value and they see where this market is going to do that, we just sign them up right there. We send the software as a service agreement, the business associate agreement, and then send them the invoice and get paid.
So literally an hour or two.
Yeah, I mean, it's about what we've got from particularly, like I said, private practice mental health professionals, that area. It's about a 30-minute onboarding process. Have them see, I said, with that includes a live demo and get them going pretty quickly.
Comment about Iowa versus Nebraska, the difference and so on. Does that mean that a mental health care provider sitting in Des Moines today that is on your platform using it would be better off seeing patients residing in Nebraska?
If they had a license in Nebraska, but they can't do that. So you have to be licensed in the state that you're seeing. That you have to, the patients that are in the state, you have to be licensed in that state to see those patients.
License in multiple states?
They can. But so I guess if I understand your question, you have to be licensed in the state where you're giving patients, but the difference in reimbursement, them able to bill for it, is a lot better in Nebraska for mental health professionals currently than it is here in Iowa. And that's going to change.
To your point, a lot of these things, it's not terribly hard to become certified in another state. Yeah. And someone that's looking to monetize and work a lot of hours, yes.
Provider here in Des Moines,
yep,
and 30% of your day-to-day patients just cancel their no-show. Can I pick up somebody if I'm licensed in Nebraska?
Yep. Those are the ones, the ones that are a little more forward-thinking, that are business savvy, go right where you're going. It's just like, well, gosh, Minnesota just submitted parity legislation. Can you help me find out what it would cost for me to get licensed in Minnesota, what that process is, or what have you? Or they just talk to that state, Nebraska Psychological Board to get licensed. And the ones, our earlier customers that are business savvy are looking to do what you're talking about, to increase their capacity.
I'll also have the challenge in that question here, that are not well fired.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say it's an EAP in Council Bluffs, okay? They got employees in Omaha and in Council Bluffs.
Right.
So do they get reimbursed based on if that person is sitting in Nebraska, or if they're sitting in Council Bluffs because they can be maybe, let's say they're working in both offices? So which one?
Well, let's just, EAP is a little different. They're contracted with a company to provide services, but...
Well, let's go back to a regular provider.
Yeah.
So let's say they can be in either place, but they work at both places. How will they reimburse them? Would they just pick that it's higher in Nebraska and get more money, or would they just have to go by where they're sitting?
Yeah, if they're licensed in both states, they can bill I mean, they can see patients in both states. So whatever that reimbursement policy is within the state, that's what they would follow per se. So to give you an example, Magellan is a big health is a Medicaid company. So the big difference and what's so funny is Magellan of Nebraska reimburses mental health professionals for online therapy and counseling in most codes for Medicaid patients. Magellan of Iowa does not. So and so if Magellan of Iowa did, it may be little differences in how the codes or how they're paid or what those pay rates are, but they would just follow the designation with each state.
And it's nothing that any of the technology providers have much to do with, because it's really about how laws are done and how the rules are done.
Correct.
And, I mean, the good news is it's opening the doors for the providers to not be restricted based on physical location. So if you are a person that is wants to work from home because you're taking care of your aged father or mother, suddenly you have a way to work from home, and if you want to get a license in 5 states, you can practice in 5 states from your home. And I think that's the freeing thing, and then it's up to each state to decide what they want to do.
And what you said, Mike, earlier is a great point. I mean, for example, you could have a provider that's licensed in Iowa. They could, if they keep their license up, they could be living in Iowa, and if they had a large client base of patients that wanted to do it virtually, they could be in Hawaii and see these patients in Iowa and get paid to do it. Doesn't matter where the provider is. The one restriction is they just have to be licensed in a state that they see patients. But that's changing as states are starting to have, reciprocate licenses and eliminating those state licenses.
And that's where you hope it's going to go, as to where it's like, look, you're either licensed or you're not.
Correct.
And a lot of these state regs, maybe Curdy, you want to jump in on this? I saw your hands start to go up. Yeah. But no, I just think a lot of it is because of logistics. In the past, it was just simply logistics and state boards. Yeah. And like some of the other things with technology, the borders are coming down.
Correct.
I think it's a question.
Can I just follow on?
Yeah.
How are you keeping ahead? So you have the 13 years of behind
Yeah.
in the network. How are you keeping up with the trends? How quickly is this going to a national system or whatever? How are you keeping
Oh man, I mean, honestly, I probably read at least like 2 hours a day just on what's going on from the federal level, the policies that have been submitted. I mean, there are like over 50 legislative policies right now dealing specifically with telehealth at the federal level. So you just have to keep up with that information. Of course,
you have a pretty strong advisory crew too. I mean, you've got some MDs on your advisory.
I do.
Others.
Yeah, but surprising enough, they don't know. They don't know. Whoops. But you have to keep up with it. What states in the last 6 months, I think. 6 states have implemented parity legislation. So, for example, Minnesota is one. So, damn sure I'm focused on a plan in Minnesota right now because they have some really robust reimbursement policies for telehealth, and so you just have to read, keep up, notifications, because it is just so forever changing. Not just read, but know what that means for your business. And I guess I go back to my 13 years of being in the payer market, health systems, what have you. I feel that's the skill set I have to be able to kind of take that information and know what it means for our business going forward.
Mark, you've been patient over here.
Yeah.
The 30%, have you been able to gather any data on how much your platform reduces that 30% of patients that don't show?
Yeah, not, what's that value proposition? So we're still gathering information, but there's been some studies out that I share with our clients about talking about a study that implemented telehealth after it and how that reduced by basically 12% as far as those no-show rates go to show. So we're building our data up to really be able to personally share those stories from us, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the biggest issue that makes it difficult for you to sleep?
What keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
You only get one page. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I guess right now, as a startup, and we've all been there. It's just like the goal is, and that's what I love about being at square one. And you start a company. When you do a startup, you're not, as we talked about, you're not a company yet. And you get in that phase where you just see the light, but just not the capacity to just execute on everything that you want to, and that's frustrating for me. I mean, that's one of the weaknesses of coming from a corporate background where you have all the resources you need to do everything you want to do. It's just like, okay, you got a $50,000 quarterly budget to do this, and that, and when you're bootstrapping, you don't have that, and that is what keeps me up at night, because it just scares me to death that this is moving so fast and we're going to get left behind and those types of things. So that's what concerns me, when you see it, but you just like, we're just not moving fast enough.
If you had money at your disposal right now, it wasn't your own.
Yeah.
What would be the next 2 to 3 hires that you would make? What expertise?
Well, to your, and well, actually, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the gentleman back there. Your name, I'm sorry. David, sorry, Dave. So, someone that just full-time focuses on the payers, because what you're seeing is payers partnering with telehealth companies to say, hey, you guys do it well, you have a network of providers, let's partner and allow reimbursement within your network of providers. I'd have someone that just focuses on the payers and kind of the employer group market as well. But it's a complicated, dynamic thing, and it's tough to find people that understand that. But that would be, if I could just hire someone that knows I can pay them $200,000 a year, I'd take it out of I'm not paying myself yet, but I'd take it out my salary just for they could focus on the payer market. Because as we talked about, they drive the bus.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
I
man.
appreciate it. I don't know. Let's see what next steps.
I just want to give a plug. So we got some entrepreneurs out here. I guess when we started talking, I just want to make the comment. The reason why I came back to Des Moines really too is the opportunity, but the mentorships that you get, the people that want to see you succeed and be helpful, and that's what I love about being here. The learnings I've had. I kind of talked about my experience, but I'm still learning a lot, and having expertise like Mike and his folks and advisors do that. But if anybody is getting some traction and startup, as you said, he focuses on high, things that are, companies are trying to grow, reach out to him. Or if you know somebody that's looking for it, reach out to Mike and Square One, because they're there to help, and it's been a great experience. But we're still grinding and just working every day to try and be successful, and that's where we're at right now. So.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, remember you're going to get a survey. Please fill it out. The Startup Family Picnic on the 3rd. The next event, I believe, is the 21st or 22nd with Tej and myself. You get a notice on that. If you're not on our email list, let Kim know, or you can just go to the website, square1dsm.com, and sign up. I don't give you more than a couple a month, I promise. I don't pollute your inbox, but you will know what's going on as far as future events. Ben, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.